Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So on my previous video, I went over why you shouldn't use aftermarket axles for your GX470 or pretty much any of your Toyota vehicles because of their poor reliability and their poor boots that end up failing on you after about a year or so. So on today's video, I'm going to be going over how to swap out the GX470 axles with those GX460 ones I got on that last video. I got it from a junkyard. The GX460 axles are a perfect fit on the 470. So it's interchangeable and both sides are the exact same axle if you didn't know. So in today's video, we'll go ahead and take that all apart. During the same video, I'm actually changing out the wheel bearing also. I'll have a separate video about the wheel bearing if you want to check that out later. So to change this axle and hub assembly out right here, you basically have to take this right here apart. It's got a crown cap on it with the cotter pin and a 35mm bolt right there to unhook. As I explained earlier, this thing is supposed to have that dust cap, but the last person that did this must have mangled it all up and they didn't even bother putting the dust cap back on, so we don't have to worry about the dust cap on this. Most of you guys should have a dust cap that you got to pop off. The easiest way to pop it off without damaging it and so you can reuse it again is to get a screwdriver, a big flathead, kind of pry one little spot, get as much as you can, kind of torque it, and then kind of move your way around and get it slowly to pop off. Once you do that, you should be able to take the whole thing off without mangling it or damaging it, and you could tap it back in later to use it. Once you go ahead and loosen that, the next thing you want to do is you want to take apart your caliper, take it off the spindle. So there's two 17mm back here that you have to take apart right there. You also need to take away these two 10mm right here that take the brake line off. The brake line goes from a hard line down here to a soft line up there, so you got to take it off from the spindle. Once you do that, make sure you have a bungee cord or some kind of hanging mechanism because you want to pull this over here, hang it off of this spot right up here. Probably is the best way to kind of get everything out of the way and make sure it supports it really good up there. That way you have room to work down here and pull the axle out, pull the hub out, and do all of that. You can see this is the side that had the busted CV, so I've got a bunch of grease here that I also have to clean up before I move too far forward and get this crap everywhere. I did kind of pressure clean and wash this a little bit, but it's still got some sling on it from just caked on grease over the years. I'm gonna go ahead and get some brake clean and some super clean and just clean all this up so that way I don't get all my hands and fingers all dirty as I take all this stuff apart. So in order to swing this whole thing out also and not damage anything, you also want to take apart your ABS sensor right here. So this thing's held on by an Allen key right there and it's got a wire harness. You go ahead and just unhook the wire harness, take that Allen key out and just take the sensor out and just put it somewhere safe so you don't damage it while we're working in here. Once you do that, everything pretty much is loosened up here. The manual also recommends that you take apart your sway bar just to kind of relieve some of the stress and you could swing this thing around easier. So that might be an optional item because also on the instructions in the manual, they want you to take this whole assembly off and take the hub off so you could press that seal on, but we're going to try to keep everything on the vehicle. One other thing that you have to unbolt so you could get access and move the CV joint and everything out of the way is you need to unbolt the ball joint right here. So down here, I believe these are two 19mm that hold this on up to the spindle. You could leave the center nut right here because that's all one assembly that bolts into there. So it's much easier to take these two 19s on either side off, and that way you could take the whole spindle off of the lower control arm. So to do the axles today, I'm going to be using this Vivor socket kit right here. They sent this over to me to review and try out. So we'll go ahead and look over it and see what it comes with and what is useful for our project here. So as you can see, it comes with a whole array of impact drivers, the deep ones, and it comes with all the sizes you're going to need for most import vehicles to do all the axles and the big bolts and everything underneath the car, especially suspension, axle nuts, and all that stuff. And these are all 1/2-inch drive for the big impact wrenches as well as your big socket wrenches and everything. It even goes all the way down to 10mm for a 1/2-inch. So this is freaking crazy right here. You're probably never going to need that because you probably can't get this into the spaces for 10mm, but they have it. They've got an 11mm over here, which is useless, but the 12s, it goes all the way up, almost every single increment, all the way up to 30 36. So 36 is most Hondas right here sockets that will take care of the Honda drive axles right there. For the GX, we're going to need a 35, so we've got the 35 right here, so that's perfect for the GX that we're going to be doing today. We have 34, 32 would be useful on the ISs and other vehicles I work on, as well as the 30. A 30 is another one that's used on some of the smaller Toyota vehicles, so we have that. The rest of these, like a 29, I've never really had use for that. 27 I've used before for big sensors and all that, as well as like 24. The 26, 25, that's again not used very often. 21, 22, these down here are very useful for suspension, so we're going to find a lot of uses for these working on the different vehicles. Definitely it's a great tool. If you guys are interested in the same kit, check out the links in the description to Amazon, where you could pick these up for like less than $100 for this whole kit. So to take the axles off, we're gonna have to drain the differential. I'm gonna go ahead and just drain everything out of it and replace the fluid on this project. So we need to take the skid plate off under here with all the 12 millimeters, just kind of get this stuff out of the way. So we're gonna go ahead and unbolt the fill bolt first. So I got this extension in here with that 10 millimeter hex secure. Make sure it's securely into there so you don't strip it, and you don't want to break it loose. Oh fuck. So once you do it, you break that loose, so you know it's good, so you'll just leave that there. So doing it right at the bolt is much easier. Go ahead and get your big ass bar in here and just break it loose. So now that we drained the differential, we'll go ahead and take the brake caliper off, take all this stuff off, take the axle and everything off and out of the way, as I explained earlier, so we can actually pull all this out and pull the axle out. Gotta be careful with the rotor on here. This thing is only held on by the lugs and everything, so I'm gonna put a safety bolt here just in case. All right, this thing's a 4 millimeter back here, so we want to go ahead, get this in here and screw the sensor off so we get this thing out of the way. Pretty easy. And then go ahead and just pull the entire sensor out. Just wiggle it out, it's in there. And just want to pop it off the harness here. We got the sensor, let's put this away. All right, now we got all the stuff out of the way up here. Go ahead, take the cotter pin out. This thing's definitely not an OEM cotter pin that is this long. And it folds over like that. Because you saw the OEM one is short. Just folds over barely just to the tip there. We'll go take the cap off. So this cap has got that blue coating. That's definitely OEM reused. This is a 35 millimeter. I showed you guys earlier that Vivor kit that I'm using. So we want to make sure we get it on there. We got it on reverse. And just shoot it off. So that makes quick work of it with this DeWalt. So there's a 19 down here, so we'll go ahead and just shoot this off with the impact. So once you take it off, you can hear it actually pop off and release some pressure. So now that we did that, we pretty much can lift this thing up. It's gonna be free, and we go ahead and just push the axle through and swing the arm out of the way and get it all the way out. So as you wiggle it around and kind of move this thing, you can get the axle all the way through, and once you get it through, you have clearance to do your work. So you can kind of just push this thing off to the side if you want to make sure you don't damage it while you're trying to take the axle out. So we'll go ahead and just leave it right here. If you want to, and you can get the actual tie rod over here, you can kind of hold it back with this, but with it being up here with all this tension and everything from the sway bar, this is all the room we're gonna have right here. So you can slide that over, and pretty much this is really all the room you need to pull the axle out anyways. So the next thing we need to do, we need to go ahead and pry this thing out of the differential. This thing is an aftermarket, so it doesn't have the little notches and everything that the factory one has that you could use a slide hammer and grab it by. So what we have to do here, we just basically have to pry it from the spot right there and make sure we don't damage anything. Since we're not reusing this axle, I don't really care if I mangle this up. I just care about the differential side that I don't mess anything up there. Right there, pop it right out. So now we go ahead and just pull the whole axle assembly out in one shot. Ah, fuck. Make sure you get it out without messing any of the seals up. All right, once we get this thing out, make sure you inspect your seal right there. Clean up any of the dirt and debris that might have gotten into there while we're popping it out. So before I end up putting the axle back in, I'm gonna put a little bit of general purpose grease on the inside lip back there on here, just so when I said once we put the axle in, we have something to ride on and we don't mess this up. For the axle shaft, I put a little bit of all-purpose grease on here and around the lip where it rides the seal. On the outside of here, I'm not gonna worry about the grease as much because when I put that new seal in, that thing already had a layer of packed grease on the backside. So that's probably enough to lubricate once it gets into there and makes the meeting surface. For this particular install, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the hub off and I'm gonna put that on later so that way I make sure that the axle's in there and it has a good seal before I go ahead and put the new hub on here. All right, I unbolted that thing again. Made a clear path into there. So we'll just go ahead, slip it in past everything, kind of get it straight into the differential. Try not to touch the sides or anything. Yeah, right now it doesn't feel like it's going in straight, so it doesn't seem to snap in or slide in easily. All right, I kind of swung this thing out of the way, pulled it over with a bungee cord, and I actually turned the steering wheel so I can move the spindle and everything that way so I can get more straight shot. I pulled the caliper up more with another hook, and I'll go ahead and try to slide it in straight now. You want to get it in there, kind of twist it around. Once you feel that it's in to the grooves, just yep, so it's snapped in. Perfect. So now that we got that in, I can go ahead and put this over here onto the spindle. And then that way we get this thing with the new hub on and tightened all up. All right, so I'll go ahead, unhook this contraption I did to pull it off to the side. Get that out of the way and get this thing back over here. So one of the things that I gotta do now is I gotta turn the steering wheel back over so I can have room to get it past this thing now. All right, so I turned it over, so I got more room over here now, so I can just go ahead and swivel it in, kind of try to get this thing over. Try not to touch the seal until you get in, and then just go ahead and just line up the seal perfectly. Right there, you can see the new grease kind of get seated into there. And yeah, just once it gets in there, I see that layer of grease that came through from the inside the seal. So I've got that baby greased up now. So next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and make sure everything's seated back here nicely. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and put the steering knuckle and everything back up, all that stuff around here before I put the hub on. The torque specs on this lower ball joint, these 219s is crazy. It's like 166. This one right here is 173. Both of these, I don't have a torque wrench that's big enough. This thing only goes up to 150. So I'm gonna just go ahead and torque it to 150 and just shoot it with the impact after that just to make sure it's tight. But that, yeah, I wasn't expecting this thing to be that tight for 166 on the 19 millimeters. So that's 150. Go ahead and shoot it with the impact after that. So that's not going anywhere. Go ahead and put on the new nut and everything. I put on all the new parts that we bought. New OEM Cotter Pins. So this one is, I guess it is as long as that one that we took out earlier. All right, that should not go anywhere. You could also fold this one all the same way if you want to, which I think I'll just go ahead and do that. So that thing's not going anywhere for safety. Other than that, we'll go ahead and put the cap on too. This was a bigger struggle than I thought it was gonna be. It was a big pain in the ass to try to get it on there. I ended up having to basically just tap it in and get it in one edge and then kind of slowly work my way around. You can see the mallet kind of left some marks here, but that's no big deal. This thing's covered up anyways, but it was much snugger and tighter than I thought it was gonna be. No wonder people mangle this thing when they try to take it apart. As far as everything else you saw me put together, I basically torqued everything back like it's supposed to be. This thing right here, the caliper, is 91 foot-pounds. Underneath was that 166, 173 on this one. And then I went ahead and finished putting the 12 millimeter here, the 10 over there. So on the back side, there was another 12 millimeter for that bracket that we had to take care of. And then that Allen key right there for the sensor. We put all that back together and made sure that was all tightened down and everything's safe again. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish the other side as a time lapse. If I run into anything that's a little bit different than this side, especially like the midpoint where it connects to a differential, there's actually a half shaft that it slides into. I'll show you guys that and how we pry off that one. But other than that, it's basically the same as this side, but we'll go over there and just show that anyways in time lapse. So on this side, I did it a little bit differently than I did on the other side to remove the axle. I went ahead and took the hub off just to inspect the inside here. So we'll go ahead and take those two 19 millimeters there, swing the arm over this way, and then pull that axle out or let it hang here so I could pop that axle out of the half shaft. But removing the hub assembly is totally optional on doing this CV. It's just another way, just more for inspection and everything. And I'm actually in the middle of changing out this hub, so that's why I have a separate video of that. So on the passenger side, it's a little bit different right here because, like I said, there's like a half shaft. So there's nothing really to leverage it on and kind of pry it off on unless I get a big block and put it right here and leverage it off of there. On the OEM one, there's usually notches right here that you could punch it that way with a punch tool. But we don't have that here. So we're going to go ahead and just rig something and try to pop that out once we get to that spot. All right, there, popped it right out. So we're pretty much good here. So pull this out, we just swing the arm over, just slide that whole thing out just like the other side. So to pop that thing out, it wasn't really that bad. You gotta make sure that you get the pry bar basically seated all the way in there up to that lip on the axle, and then you just get that leverage and there's this one quick pop and it comes right out. So on here, you basically get it in between that spot right here and the seal, that little seal in there, and you should be able to wedge it right out from that seal on that side without damaging the seal if you're gonna have to reuse it. Even though we drained the differential, this side still had fluid in it because it's higher than the differential. So a little bit of fluid dripped out onto the floor or onto my cardboard right here. So just be prepared for that on the passenger side. All right, before we put the CV back in, I greased it up just like the other side with some general purpose grease around the lip of the seal. In addition, on the axle itself, we went ahead and just greased that up just to give it a little bit of lubrication to go in there and then right against that seal. So I cleared everything out. I took the bolts back off and just pulled it off to the side there so we have some room. And I'm gonna try to just put it right in there in one shot. So when we tap that thing in with that pry bar, I told you we just use that little lip right there, tap it in. You can see that metal seal is in there seated and sealed up. So there shouldn't be any issues with this. All right, we got that axle back in there on this side. So now we got used good condition GX460 axles in my GX470. This is a big upgrade. This is a much better boot in my opinion, and this should last for the rest of the life of this vehicle without any issues. If you guys need to upgrade your axles on your 470, I would really recommend going with the 460 axles. People have really good reviews on these, and the OEM ones aren't that expensive, as I explained on my other video when I went over these things. So that was a nice success trying to get this axle in here, and actually taking off the wheel hub while you're already in here just to do the axle is probably a better way to do it, just because you get to see that seal and the way it's seated on the inside, and you could grease it up and you can make sure you don't damage it. Hey guys, thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this video on swapping out the axles on the GX470 with the 460 axles. As you can see, they're a perfect fit. Everything goes in perfectly. These are actually better because I feel like the boot on these are much better than the ones that came with the 470. They're that hard plastic. Even though I don't have a set of OEM 470 ones to compare to, I only have those ugly aftermarket ones that we took off. Those had that poor neoprene, which is very common on aftermarket, and pretty much all those fail within a year or two, even if you don't go off-roading or drive it hard. If you guys found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel, turn on bell notifications, get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, whether it's on the cars, in the house, in the garage, or whatever I'm doing, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.